Welcome to Prize Fighters, Circus Freaks, and Gangsters. I'm Greta.
And I'm Jamie.
And this week we are looking at Warrior Season 2, Episode 2, The Chinese Connection.
Oh, yes. And I was very excited because I expected to see Chen Zhen jumping out and doing Chinese Connection, Fists of Fury stuff. But this was not what I thought. I didn't see a Chinese connection here, but I think you saw a connection here that was something else.
See, when I saw the title, I was thinking, oh, they're going to do a spin on The French Connection, which is a movie about French heroin dealers in New York City. And so I'm like, well, they're smuggling opium. They're doing, like, Young Jun and Assam have, like, big ideas about changing the opium trade around. And I was like, that's what it's going to be about. So, you know, thanks, Dad, I guess, for being a Steve McQueen fan.
So so Steve McQueen was a friend of Bruce Lee, which is kind of a fun connection there. I know that Fists of Fury came out in 1972. Is that around when French Connection came out?
Yeah.
Okay. Did Steve McQueen use any kung fu in that film? Because I know he was a best friend of Bruce Lee. They smoked weed together. They did a lot of kung fu together. Did he use any kung fu in that movie?
I have no idea. It's been so long since I've seen the movie, and whatever he would have used, at the point I was watching it, I didn't watch fights with like any critical eye, but I highly doubt it.
Yeah, I can understand that. Well, maybe that's one we can drop in the that's one we can drop into a Patreon extra or something, because it might be fun to just see if there was any in there. I don't remember him karateing anybody in Bullet.
No. I mean, based on what we saw in the OG Kung Fu series,
good Lord,
the ability of American directors, writers, and choreographers to incorporate any sort of like Kung Fu into their films, I don't think it was a thing. It was all punch 'em ups.
I will say there is a technological reason for that, in large part. There was a problem with Bruce Lee, and then there was also a problem with Jet Li making Lethal Weapon 4, where their moves were so fast they could not catch them on the film.
Yeah, too fast.
Way too fast. So it looked like they teleported. And it's crazy to think that happened in, 1998 or something like that, when Lethal Weapon 4 came out. But still, the technology was still not fast enough to keep up with Kung Fu. So I think that is an interesting thing we might want to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I just think the fighting style was just too alien to the people we're working with. But we get to have some good old punch 'em ups starting things out. No kung fu necessary, as we get a really fun cold open as O'Hara is just chasing after this dude he needs to get cash from.
And speaking of chase scenes, this has got to be one of the most realistic chase scenes that's ever been in a movie. The set design is amazing, so it's so detailed and everything's rough-hewn, and even the sound of them going over the wooden boxes and everything sounded really authentic. Right. But both of them being out of shape and just wheezing and falling over stuff, and then O'Hara.
Yeah, I was gonna say they kept crashing into stuff. Nobody's like gracefully dodging. Right. They're just like, oh.
And then O'Hara had it was kind of a cliche line, but it was still super fun when he's finally caught the guy and gotten some money out of this guy because he's collecting for the Fong Hai. And he just punches the guy in the stomach, and he's like, and that's for making me run. It was a real John Wayne moment.
It was great. But yeah, we see that O'Hara's keeping up his collection side hustle. And, you know, like you said, he's going to be good at it. He's not doing too bad.
Not at all.
But yeah, so we start up the show after the cold open, and this is another cold open. If a village could have a hangover, this is the village with a hangover. You could just smell the vomit and like candle wax.
It does look gross, but I'm sure it doesn't look nearly as gross as it would have back then, because we don't have 6 tons of of horse shit on the streets, combined with human excrement and offal from the butchers and blood from the barber.
Yeah, where are the rats, man? The rats, the pariah dogs. Though to be fair, this part of town probably doesn't get a lot of horse manure because nobody's riding horses. Like the people who have horses aren't hanging out in this part of town with their horses because they'd probably end up in a restaurant somewhere as lunch.
Yeah. They're just coming through with wagons, I suppose, here. But, yeah, God, it's just such a rich thing. And I can't wait for smell-o-vision. Just breathing in deep lungfuls of all of that effluvium will be amazing. No. Yeah. Let's just hope it's as sticky and...
You keep saying this is going to happen, and no!
Sticky and weighty.
So anyway, Pirate Lady greets her buds, Assam and Youngjun, and says, hey, I'm coming through for you. And so finally, after establishing...
Oh, wait. We can't just stop with... So Vega is her name, not Pirate Lady.
Okay, sorry.
And let's talk her... Now she's gone... Xena goes buccaneering. That's where her outfit is. So she's still got the Xena top on, where she looks like she's definitely a warrior princess, and she is about to go and slay people alongside of Conan. But then at the bottom, she's gone with kind of a flamenco dress that's high at the knee and long in the back, and it's kind of a buccaneering look. It's something. She really has, but I think, and we had discussed this off of the camera here, but we are both in agreement that the reason why there is like a lack of historicity in these outfits for the women is to demonstrate exactly how much they stood out from society, right?
Yeah. Because if you were a woman in that place and time, you'd look at somebody and go, oh, those buttons, or that's where she's putting her cuff. That stuff is absolutely invisible to us. And so, yeah, they're sort of making them very outlandish in this context. So we're like, oh, these people are standouts in whatever way.
Yeah. It's almost like there's a spotlight on them because they stand out that much. So they can be forgiven for their lack of historicity because at this point, this is kind of how they would have appeared to everybody. Like, oh my God, this is an alien among us kind of thing, right?
Who does she think she is? Yeah, they really are standing out on purpose. And, in the last episode, just sort of pointing out, they've sort of turned up some of the situations to 11 just to give it this more sort of graphically startling look. And hey, it's a good story. I'm here.
So what would be happening if a woman was showing her knees and shin in public? And so she doesn't have a bonnet on, right? And so she's got to have some kind of hat on because Jesus doesn't like hair. And then her shins are tantalizing. So would she be drawn and quartered for this, or what sort of thing is happening to her as punishment for...
Sort of depending on what part of town. In the part of town she's in, like, who cares, whatever. But yeah, if she was walking sort of the nice streets of town, she would probably get arrested for indecency, public indecency.
Oh, all right. Okay, so that... I recall reading about two women getting arrested for wearing pants in 1914 when they were riding across country on a motorcycle, and that would have been an indecency charge, not a woman in pants charge.
Did you know women have two legs?
We know that they have shins. I don't know what happens after the shins. I'm not allowed to find out.
But it always, I always found it hilarious that, okay, women can't wear pants, and yet for formal occasions, they're dressed in things that barely cover their chest. Their shoulders are showing everywhere. But heaven forfend, we should see their lower limbs.
Well, maybe it was because everybody back then had vicious foot fetishes. I don't know. The king of Bavaria had a statue made of Lola Montez's feet, and people used to thirst after that shit. So, I don't know, maybe people just, they got real weird for a clean foot back in the day. Who knows? A clean foot was so rare, people would just, fall down dead if they saw one.
Okay, so yeah, Youngjun and Assam, they get to meet, hey, there are black people in San Francisco. Look at that. They
are, and where the women have the volume turned up on them, or at least the women that we're paying attention to,
the main characters, yeah.
Yes. In this, when they walk into the ancient pirate ship that is the home of Happy Jack and his crew, it's like they turn the color down. Everything is just muted. It turns into this all muddy wash of browns, and everything's homespun, and it's quiet and dim and miserable. It's really poignant. I mean, they really punch it into your face. Like, their life is abject misery from start to finish, even when you're rich as shit like Happy Jack and have gold all over your fingers and like a gold pocket watch.
Right. Yeah, these women. And you could also see that their clothes are all like sloppy and floppy and soft, and they don't have any of the stiffness that clothes that are professionally laundered and are cut to fit and everything. So yeah, they're wearing.
They actually look like filthy hand-me-downs, because you can see actually patterns in the fabric, because I've now watched this episode like 4 times. But but yeah, you can see there's actually a ton of embroidery on their shirts and stuff, but their shirts are so dingy and dim, and like, I don't know how they managed to do the costuming so badass, but they crushed it.
Yeah.
They really drove
and
it home.
They definitely gave the Opium King, Happy Jack, there a really sort of nice steampunk look with that thick leather vest that's kind of armory. But yeah, he's got that big gold pocket watch chain. And he's here to talk business with, the bad boys of the Hopway.
And wait, I just want to point out that, like, the pocket watch here, that's something that a very wealthy person would have had, right?
Right.
It's not something that any typical person... So this is like spoils of war that he's showing on his fingers and on his... Yeah, he literally looks like a pirate here.
Yeah.
And then he's contrasted against Vega, and all of her jewelry, I don't know if you noticed, but it was very Spanish. So it was all turquoise and silver, and it was very Southwestern. So it was a neat contrast. But again, it really showed the difference between, the bright colors of Vega and then the very bright whites of the shirts of the, those Mandarin collar shirts they have with their suits. And I also realized the red pocket square, I think, is like going with the red envelope thing, like to ward off evil spirits and things like that. I think it's supposed to bring good luck, their red pocket square.
Yeah, red is definitely sort of a color of good fortune for sure.
Yeah, it was a great striking scene from all of the wardrobe perspectives.
Yeah, you definitely are like, okay, you could definitely pick out who's on what team by what they're wearing. So last episode, we were wondering, like, when they're talking about local opium traders, you did some research.
I did do some research. So this scene is basically like 19th century New Jack City, and instead of them, bagging up crack, though, they're rolling up little balls of opium. And we wanted to find out. We had a question about a local source of opium, and so I dug and dug because I was trying to figure out what the problem with the opium was, because we both thought maybe it was a British East India Company source versus a Chinese source.
Right.
So that's where I started, and I found out that the reason why China fell apart in the 19th century was due in large part to the fact that the British East India Company flooded China with opium and basically
from India.
Yes, because they would just like seize it, right? And then they would just smuggle it into China through the coastal cities.
Oh, no, it's much worse. They basically put a bunch of Indian farmers into indentured slavery to grow opium for them. So all of these Indian farmers who had been growing food for themselves and for their villages now were growing opium for the East India Company, getting paid shit. And this is part of what caused a bunch of famines in India under the watch of the British East India Company.
Wow. And so not only did it cause famines, but I know that in the mid-1830s, 90% of the Chinese population were opium addicts on the coast. And that's like 75% of the Chinese population is on the coast. And so we're looking at like 65, 68% of the population of China is addicted to opium at this time. And the reason why they did this was because the Chinese were so rich at the time. They only wanted to trade for silver, right? They were going to give silk and
tea and porcelain. Yeah.
Yes. So what was the problem there?
So the British were like, "Hey, why can't we trade goods to you?" And the Chinese were like, "We don't want anything. However, we're a little short on money. Like, metal for money. And so the only thing they were willing to trade the silk and tea and porcelain for was silver. And this whole thing with the Chinese only accepting silver for silk goes all the way back to the Roman Empire. The Romans got pissed about the same thing.
Ah, and then I know the Venetians stole silkworms at some point for their own silk production, and they also started their own porcelain production. And there's some difference between the two porcelains, but yeah, the Chinese had a coinage shortage, and they only wanted silver. So the British are like, "You want silver? We want silver too. So you know what we're going to make you do? Give us your silver, because we're going to, flood the markets with opium." Ah, well, that is horrible but clever. And that's
the root of the Opium Wars, kind of in a nutshell.
All right, and so we have Chinese versus Afghani opium, but then I discovered that during the Civil War, there was a huge demand for morphine, for obvious reasons. People having their legs and arms and everything blown off. And the heavy Chinese immigration from the Opium Wars and the revolutions and the famines meant that there were tons of Chinese workers on the Mexican Railroad. And so the U.S. encouraged opium production in Sinaloa, Durango, and Chihuahua to help fuel the demand for opium in the Civil War.
Oh, my God.
And then after that demand dried up, there was tons of opium on the market for sale. And so I'm guessing that's where Happy Jack is getting his opium.
No, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, that good Mexican opium.
Yeah, and
also, it seems like the cartels were encouraged, at the very least, by the American government during the American Civil War.
We need you guys to do something for us, but once we're done with you, toodles.
Yeah.
It's figure it out on your own.
Whew, it's wild. But so now we're back with Happy Jack, and he is going to sell these guys opium against Father June doesn't know, and so they're going to do this crazy shit. And they want Happy Jack to store the opium for them because they don't have anywhere to store it.
Right. And you kind of think about this, like, where could they put it? Like, they can't put it in their house because they, live on Hopway property. They can't buy a warehouse because they're, Chinese. Yeah. They can't go rent a storage unit or anything.
I think their only option would be chow. If they had any option at this point, I think it would be chow. But
the police are all up in Chow's business too, so he wouldn't do that.
True. Well, you make a good point. So they just come back to Happy Jack, and I think this is getting more and more interesting, right? Because it's just getting more and more difficult for everything to happen. But they're making their own problems through the whole thing.
Oh yeah. Young June in this case is right for not liking where this is going, but I guess he sort of feels like he's in too deep now. So all right, fine. We'll do this.
Also, it has to be difficult to be in a position of power when you don't speak the local language.
Yeah.
So he is in a really tough spot because he speaks the language of a place that he's never been.
Right.
And he's in a place where he doesn't speak the language. So that is a tough spot to be in, I'm sure.
Yeah,
But that is not his own fault, which, again, it was illegal for Chinese immigrants to get any kind of education in the United States at that time.
But so we leave that conundrum sort of on the back burner, working up to a boil, and we get to see Li, I guess, in his manic phase. He's got plenty of laudanum. He's feeling good, and he is running a mile a minute with that mouth. He is already with all the conspiracies.
I still think that he is doing a Sherlock Holmes thing, and he's found his antidote to laudanum, which is cocaine. So it was a tried and true method at the time, and he is following in the path of Sherlock Holmes in basically every way. So I really feel like he's coked up here because he's talking a lot. He hasn't slept. He's a mess, and he looks like death. He looks like a cracker.
Yeah, he was super shiny and clean cut and clean shaven all last season, and so you can see he's getting all ragged around the edges for sure.
He's shiny for a different reason now. He's just kind of got an oily sheen now.
Yes, and he is just all up in O'Hara's business. O'Hara's still getting the caffeine's kicking in, the nicotine's kicking in. He's just barely there. And Lee is like, and I have all this evidence and I'm doing all this investigation. And O'Hara's like, look, if I just let you tell me this, will you shut up and go away?
And I think the best part was, because I doubt that there was any cop on planet Earth doing any kind of accounting, looking at anybody's accounting at the time. But Lee's been up all night pouring through this accounting, and he's like, yeah, I did all their accounting, and I found all these discrepancies. And O'Hara looks at him and goes, no wonder you got all these fucking headaches. You're not an accountant, you're a fucking cop. And,
so we get to see Sam Blake doing his darndest to assert his authority.
Yes, in his meeting, his emergency meeting for business owners, for which he specifically and idiotically left out his own wife.
Yeah, and so she comes storming in there and just plops herself in the center and just starts taking him to task. And he tries to do, no, I'm talking to the real people.
Yeah, she owns him in this meeting. He has no retorts. He has nothing. He tries to ignore her, and then she comes in with will the mayor do anything to protect us from Leary and his thugs? And it is amazing because she's backed him into a corner. And you can tell he purses his lips and he's looking at her like, I'm going to kill this bitch. He looks like he's going to kill her.
And he does start to talk to her like she's his wife. But then he realizes that makes him look weak, and Buckley's standing right there over his shoulder going, hey. Like, he is just like this dark little demon following Blake around, just messing up his game. I mean, Blake's doing a pretty good job of that anyway, but yeah, Buckley's just always like poke.
He really is like any incel on planet Earth, though, who is looking at the guy who does get laid on occasion and just like, oh, you're getting a bad relationship, you're a cuck and this and that,
yeah.
And just like talking shit, and it's like, bro. But yeah, so I just see him back there like doing that weird incel thing on the internet, but he's doing it in real life.
Yeah. So we get the follow-up from the end of last episode where Chow has a secret. Now, with my past in romance novel reading, I'm like, it's a secret, baby. Because that's the only secret, really, somebody in a whorehouse would really care all that much about. But did you go secret baby when you were thinking that?
It was the only thing I could think of. I was thinking baby mama because, she was a prostitute, and
Yep.
and he acted real uncomfortable, and you don't see Chow act uncomfortable very often.
Right.
But what I have known a lot of people through other people, or just worked around people who were trying to dodge child support. So sure. I've seen all the faces and all the comments and all the behaviors, and I knew right away, this is a scumbag trying to dodge child support.
Okay. Well, good acting then.
Yeah. Oh, he nailed it. He nailed the scumbag deadbeat dad.
And we get to meet the baby mama, and we get to meet this adorable little girl, and she calls him Dada, and he said no. And I thought for just a second, I gave him the benefit of the doubt and thought he was going to say no, Baba, because that would be Chinese for daddy. But he's like, nope, just a friend. I'm like, you ass.
Oh, but you breezed right past the fact that, one, he showed up just to drop off cash to that lady and then leave a top for a toy, which I guess was a popular child's toy at the time, and then dip without seeing the kid.
Right.
He was trying to just, here's an envelope of cash. I'm sorry it's late. I got raided this week. I'm out. And she was like, no, you need to see your daughter. Here comes your daughter. And he was like, God damn it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a lot. He was really, he's really a piece of work, that one.
Yeah, and part of me was wondering how much it sort of reflected back to some of these different Chinese characters who are like, I can only take on so many problems. Sort of like when Ah Toy was the one girl that she decided not to buy at the slave auction. She's just like, this woman's too much of a mess. I can't deal with all these problems. I'm wondering how much of Chow's problem is that his daughter is half Chinese. And so she wouldn't be accepted in the Chinese part of town, and she's also not going to be accepted in the white part of town. And he's like, fuck, that's too many problems. I mean, it'd make him a better person.
I get the sense that he's a nice guy, so maybe he doesn't want to endanger the kid, but I think I'm giving him too much credit, and he's just a piece of shit who's trying to ignore the fact he's a kid that he didn't prepare for and doesn't necessarily want.
Yeah. And now that I rewatched the episode, I'm wondering how much of a parallel with Young June this is going to set up.
That's interesting. You would think that he would be more sympathetic.
Because they start talking about his mom.
Well, I think that people would always be more sympathetic to people who are in similar situations to their own. But I find that that's almost never the case. So,
right.
Yeah. In my head, though, people are sympathetic to people who suffer from the same problems that they do.
You'd think.
But, yeah. But anyway, so then we cut to Patterson, the lawyer. The spineless pussy of a lawyer.
Lee is just like a dog with a bone he won't put down.
Yeah. So O'Hara's finally like, God damn it, I'm going to go do some police work, I guess. And the way they shoot it, you can see that O'Hara's just like, I smell your bullshit, motherfucker, keep talking. But he's just letting the guy run out his line, you know what I mean?
Right, because Lee's doing all the like bird dogging. Hey, what about this? What about this? What about this? Why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? And Patterson's like, oh, well, lawyer stuff. And
then O'Hara, his first words are, but you ever do any work with the Chinese? And boom, he's got the man right there, because he flinches, and then it's over.
Yeah.
Yep. So and then Lee is smug as hell because he knows that he got him, and O'Hara is actually happy with himself. He walks out of there and he's like, every now and again, it's nice to do a little actual police work. He's proud of himself. Pats himself on the back a little bit. He likes Lee a little more for making him do it.
Yes, and once again, you can see Lee he's just rough around the edges. He is not holding it together as well as he wants to.
No. Well, when you haven't slept in weeks, I would imagine, and you have a psychotic laudanum problem, I imagine that would that's going to happen. It's just going to happen. I mean, I've never had a problem with laudanum, but you can imagine what it would be like.
Yeah. So Penny has realized that the mayor's not going to do jack shit for her or any of the other factory owners, so she has decided she needs to take the protection of her steel plant into her own hands or something.
Yes. And so she has the very, very bright idea to hire the Hop Way. I mean, who else would she hire? I mean, any of the Chinese gangs, really, but because she has the connection to the Hop Way, it makes perfect sense to ask Assam, who is understandably quite bitter over their last encounter.
It did crack me up when she gets very flustered and she offers him tea, and I could just see it in Assam's face, like, English tea? Gross.
I would love to get a 19th century Chinese review of English tea, but I don't know if one exists. But not at least in English. But that would be hilarious to find out exactly what they're like. Get kind of a Yelp review of Earl Grey. It would be. Oh my goodness, that would be a good time.
Putting sugar in their tea. You
said there's a difference in the way that the English make their tea. Like the English boil their tea. And the Chinese have... I didn't even know there are different temperatures at which you can steep the tea.
Yeah. So like white tea, which is the most delicate, you steep it at a lowest temperature. And then like different green teas, you steep at different temperatures. Whereas the English just boil their water and put all of their teas in water that's like at boiling temperature.
Savages. Absolute savages. Unbelievable. Well, they could grow up and drink coffee like adults, but,
you're terrible, but...
Or they could go with the traditional American caffeinated drink, the black drink, Ilex vomitoria. It had a stupid amount of caffeine in it. It's one of the ways that I justify my astonishing caffeine consumption is that theirs was so much higher than mine, and they survived. So we'll all be okay.
But yeah, anyway, so Assam isn't having any tea, but he has pride just rolling off of him, and it is all wounded. He's not going to do nothing for no penny who treated him that way.
I don't even see it as pride. He is just he's an angry little boy who is mad that somebody was mean to him, and so he's just going to say no.
Yeah. And Penny didn't have time for that. She's got to do practical stuff.
Yeah, but the Hopway do need money. they could use this work. And all of it makes sense, and he still says no.
Well, there is the one problem, though. It's like, okay, if the Hop Way start working with this white lady, like, what does that do to sort of their loyalty ties and how everything works in? And Father June and Young June they're struggling with this idea of loyalty, but Penny probably doesn't understand loyalty a whole lot because she's had to do solo gigs for most of her life.
Although I would think that because, like, if somebody were to come to her aid and be a genuine help to her, she would have undying loyalty to them.
I mean, that's true. She did, in her own clumsy way, try to help out Assam in season 1. So, yeah you're not wrong.
I feel like she would definitely pay this. And he knows that. He knows Penny's not a bad person, so I think he's just doing it because he's being a better little boy.
Yeah, and it is that young man's pride. Like, you can't, I'm not meh.
Meh, exactly.
So then we cut to the mysterious and mildly threatening Mrs. Davenport.
Mrs. Davenport she is an imposing figure. She has a lot of gravitas. Even though we have no idea who she is,
yes,
she busts into a whorehouse with a bunch of very, very Irish cops. Just the most Irish cops who have ever Irish.
Yes.
And, I mean, they might as well have been carrying shillelaghs and, like, yeah, singing Irish drinking songs as they came through the door. But, so they're busting up this whorehouse, and the women are obviously horrifically traumatized, and turns out that she is based on a real-life woman named Donaldina Cameron, who was a nun from New Zealand who founded the Occidental Mission Home for Girls in 1874 and rescued a bunch of women from sex slavery. And she had to do that because in 1875 they banned all women from Chinese women from coming to the U.S. So they had to smuggle women into the U.S., and they lived in horrible conditions and usually only lived 5 years. 5. Their life expectancy was 5 years.
Wow, that is worse than life expectancy on a Barbados sugar plantation.
Yeah, that's like early Jamaican plantation type life expectancy. Except they were just being raped and starved to death.
Yeah.
Rather than worked to death.
And it's one of those things, it's like layers and layers of vicious cycles too, because a lot of these women were sold, or really girls, sold by their families because they were starving because of the opium wars, and they were like, okay, I'll sell my daughter to kind of keep the rest of my family alive. And so those were often the ones who were trafficked to the U.S.
It's crazy. I mean, these poor women. And the one woman that she rescues is obviously, she's like catatonic. This little girl is just shaking and kind of making odd noises to herself. But she's just a shell of a human being. And so this woman is basically swooped in like she is the white savior complex writ large as a human being, but there she is.
And to be fair, she's sort of figuring things out, like how do I solve a problem I'm faced with? And she definitely does have commentary for the cops, because the cops are like, all right, all John's out. And she's like, shouldn't she be arresting these guys? They're the ones who are technically committing the crime. So like, don't tell us how to do our job, and we won't tell you how to do yours.
Yeah. Or we won't tell you how to be a bossy rich white lady or something like that, is what they said.
And at this point, she's just dealing with the problem in front of her. Looking at the larger system is beyond her. At this point, she's just one woman, so she's doing something.
Yeah, and she's doing it well. I mean, at a time when women had absolutely no property, they were chattel. They were literal property of their husbands. This woman is out there bossing cops around. So she's somebody we need to know about. Yes. I'm looking forward to finding out who this lady is in the show.
So Assam and Young June, they go back to pick up their opium and sort of see what's what. And the opium pirates have decided, look, we'll take your money, we'll make your opium, but we're not going to store it. So how about that?
Yeah, and Young June just flips the fuck out because that's Young June's MO, and he goes bananas. And we get our first fight scene, which was a completely unnecessary fight scene. And like, it pitted two absolute murderers against a bunch of freed slaves who don't appear to know how to fight. So they're just throwing old school right-handed haymakers, and Young Jun is out there carving people up, stabbing people through the feet, just hacking them up, and until Happy Jack puts a gun to his head.
And then they're literally negotiating at gunpoint. One thing I did sort of like about that fight, though, that it had this very swashbuckling air. Like, all of the rules in some of the, I don't want to call them pretty fights, but the ones where you have people sort of working at similar levels of competency, where this one's just like, nobody cares. They're just going in wherever they can get something.
Yeah, well, I think there's also an element of probably a lot of the stuntmen just want to show off their skills. So they want to be out there demonstrating their taekwondo kicks or whatever. And in this, they just had to make it look real, and they did. They crushed it. These guys crushed it. And one thing that I wanted to point out was that Den of Geek took real issue, apparently, with, and I hadn't noticed this in the past. I just happened to look it up for this episode, but they mentioned that Young Jun had switched his grip to the ice pick type grip in this, because he had been using the forward grip, the way you would hold a kitchen knife normally, and I had pointed out that he was using his switchblades like piercers, and which was a really common thing at that time, and it was a really popular fighting style. Den of Geek either doesn't know about that, or they think otherwise. Anyway, the traditional way to use the knives is backhanded, so they were very excited with the fact he was in there stabbing people ice pick style with these knives. You guys can let us know in the comments if you give a shit. But anyway, moving on. This fight scene made nerds happy.
Yeah, I just took it as, Young Jun, because, again, they keep talking about his mom, and I'm thinking he was probably like just this little kid who was hanging around all the different fighters and picking up all sorts of different techniques from everybody who would teach him anything. And so he probably just switches techniques for whatever room he's in. Like, he didn't care.
Yeah, and I see no problem with that. Plus, Bruce Lee loved doing that. Bruce Lee apparently used to dress up like a woman occasionally and go to bars and pick fights with guys just so you can try out different moves on people. I guess while he was zooted as hell, he and Steve McQueen would just do a bunch of coke and go beat people up.
Oh, my God. Okay.
But there are a bunch of letters. So my JKD instructor back in the day had told us Bruce Lee was a crazy cokehead, and he used to do all this crazy stuff. And everybody always poo-pooed these things when I'd tell them that. And then these letters came out a few years ago that were released by a famous actor. Well, he wasn't really all that famous, but he was an actor, and he had this correspondence with Bruce Lee. And it came out that he was indeed a crazy cokehead and smoked pounds of weed. He was a big pothead and cokehead, and him and Steve McQueen used to get after it.
But yeah, so we end up basically with a renegotiation of the terms at gunpoint.
At gunpoint, with what looks like some kind of flintlock pistol, doesn't it? You know what I mean? It's either the world's oldest sawed-off shotgun, or he is using an actual flintlock pistol.
And you can actually see that, these pirate guys, these opium smugglers from Mexico, these former slaves, there's going to be all of this old weaponry lying around, and a fair number of former slaves had been trained in blacksmithing, so they could have gotten these things up and running again.
Oh, well, there you go. Shit.
I mean, because at this point, people would still carry around tinder boxes with flint and steel in them as fire starters. Like, yeah, matches were okay, but sometimes matches would just spontaneously combust and light you on fire. So there were plenty of people who were like, maybe I don't want a match.
And you might have been able to get around the anti-gun laws that were in place at the time by saying, oh, well, it's a museum piece, or, oh, it's just for decoration or whatever. Look at it. It's a flintlock. Who knows?
I have a funny feeling the cops weren't coming back into these old pirate ships and checking people's weapons collection.
Yeah, I don't think there's unless they had the army behind them. They probably weren't going to go near that beached pirate ship.
So we have a renegotiation or a negotiation between Happy Jack and the Hop Way, and then we see Buckley and Mai Ling meeting between their carriages and sort of talking about the terms of their not partnership, but their working agreement, I guess.
Yes. The meet cute, where she dresses like Xena and then Little Green Riding Hood over top of her Xena outfit.
Oh, no, you're talking about when she goes into the the restaurant. I'm talking about when Buckley and Mei Ling are standing between their carriages, and Buckley's like, more chaos, faster.
Oh, yeah. You can see underneath her little hood thing, you can see her little greaves, her gold greaves and stuff. So she's wearing that outfit for later, but it's covered by her little green riding hood thing. See, because of you, I'm paying real close attention to the fashion.
Yeah, but Buckley's like, more chaos, faster, and Mei Ling's like, chill, dude, we're making a lot of money, like, calm it. And Buckley's like, no, it needs to be worse. It needs to be worse more now.
Yeah, he's turned into the Joker all of a sudden. He's like the Joker on coke.
And I'm wondering, like, is Buckley spreading himself too thin? Like, does he have too many evil irons in the fire at this point?
It seems like there might not even be a plan at this point. He's just doing everything like a Russian, just in the furtherance of evil. That's just it. He's just here as chaotic evil. Like, I'm here to fuck shit up.
That works too. I mean, because just at every turn, he's just poking people. He's just irritating them. He's telling them to do more bad things faster. Like, he's just that. Yeah, he's the happy fun ball of evil.
Yeah, see, these plans, they always involve like, well, we got to screw all these people over to have this one specific outcome happen. And if that happens, we can do all these evil deeds. And it's like, but that is real. It's a long shot in the first place. There's so many moving parts. I feel like they're just like, it's a wing and a prayer, but we're just here to fuck shit up. Hopefully I make some money before I die. They're just, just simple-minded assholes.
That is so much more likely. And then we get to see just how bad things are going for Li. He's sleeping in his shirt. He is a far cry from the man who is doing his own laundry.
How often would a person do their laundry at this? So they weren't bathing often, were they? And were they doing their laundry often?
Well,
I was thinking about that as I was watching this. Like, how bad could they have smelled? I mean, I know how bad they could smell, but how bad did they smell? Let's get into this.
So in a proper home, you had laundry day once a week. Okay. And so it would be very common for people to take their clothes to the laundry once a week if they had any pretensions at sort of being a middle-class person, an office worker, like somebody who was climbing sort of the greasy pole of social niceties.
So are you wearing the same clothes every day then?
Yeah.
Pretty much? Okay.
So
you're wearing the same clothes every day and washing them once a week?
Right. And what usually would happen is you sort of have your Sunday best. And so you'd wear like your nice stuff when, and then you would sort of stay at home while you were doing laundry. You'd always do laundry on Monday because that's the way your Sunday best could definitely be clean and dry and pressed and starched by Sunday. Because no dryers. And if it was drizzly, well, God help you.
All right. And so how often do they bathe then?
Again, it's, how rich are you? A rich person was probably bathing a couple of times a week, especially if you're a woman, and it wouldn't be like a whole bath necessarily. It'd be more like a cat bath kind of thing where you'd be sort of standing and like pouring pitchers of water over you and like with a washcloth.
And women still wore shirts while they bathed back then, didn't they?
Again, it depends. Some women definitely did, and the more sort of foreign Protestant weirdo rabbit holes you go down, oh, definitely.
Okay, yeah, I don't know if you told me that or I read that recently, but that is such a weird goddamn thing to think about, people showering with their clothes on.
Yeah, whereas, as you sort of go down the ladder, you might take a bath a couple of times a year, sort of for Easter and Christmas kind of thing. It really depended.
So washing their clothes once a week, taking a bath for special occasions.
Yep. And when you get married, that's important too.
And they were drunk all day long. So just that horrible hangover sweat smell that, that where you smell like you're sick and you're going to die.
Yeah.
All the time on top of your filthy ass and, oh my God.
And then, of course, you've got all of the reek from they've got gas lights, but if you've got whale oil or you've got tallow candles.
Oh, so there's that it's all greasy.
Yeah.
Everything's greasy, everything's oily. For anybody who has not been around an animal fat candle, it's it's a film in the air. Like, it's actually, you can feel it touch, just the air touching you. And it gets all over you, and it's oily, and it's nasty, and it gets in your throat, and it's something else. I've never smelled whale candles, but I've smelled yak butter candles, and I wish I hadn't.
Yeah. No, whale oil, that was part of its appeal, that it was much less cloying. It had much less of a smell than, say, pig tallow or beef tallow or something like that. But it still definitely had a stink, though the spermaceti, the very best stuff, the most expensive stuff, had the least smell. But yes, that's part of the reason beeswax candles were so, like, expensive and important, and like they were the best, because a beeswax candle actually smells kind of nice.
They do. And also, public service announcement, don't kill any goddamn bees, please. Thank you. We'd all like to keep living.
Yeah. yeah, that's where our plants, all
Stop
of our plants
flinching at bees. From. They're here. They live with us. You don't need to kill any bees. Just let them do their thing.
You ignore them, they'll ignore you. Everybody will be happy. But yeah, so Lee is sleeping in his shirt. He reaches for his bottle of laudanum. It's empty. So he walks into a bar from Gangs of New York to get some more.
He walks into a black bar. He walks into a bar. I mean, that had to have been something different for those people. Because this is not, I mean, you stuck to the color that you were, I guess, back then. Now, you had to almost legally, practically. But, like, so it would have been unsafe for you to go into another place. And he's in the Barbary Coast, which is literally the least safe place that there is. And it's named after a place where you go to be shanghaied. And what happens to Lee here?
Whew. Well, he gets
shanghaied.
Yeah, well, he doesn't end up on a boat, but he definitely gets jackrolled. But he's having flashbacks to his black girlfriend, whereas the woman tending bar, she's like, I see you have some money in your pocket, and I would like that.
Yeah, and I see that you like black women, white man.
Yes.
So I would like to go into the alley with you and give you a bunch of laudanum, and then we're going to make out, is the idea. That's the idea. It's honeypot is what it's called, I think. And it's a honeypot scheme. And it works quite well. And he thinks that she's his dead wife, and then he wakes up in an alley, and he would have had every disease that exists. I would imagine if you woke up face down in an alley in the 19th century in the Barbary Coast. What on earth could have been on the ground in there? I mean, first of all, the mud wasn't mud; it was shit. Human shit, pig shit, cow shit, horse shit, vomit, trash, more trash. Dead things, dead rats. My God, the dead rats. Can you imagine how many dead rats there probably were? And so he would have had
to.
Oh my God, he probably woke up with his face on a dead rat. And yeah, so that's where Lee wakes up with no money.
Yeah, he is going headfirst down the slide to the bad place. But O'Hara, now his life is good right now.
Oh, yeah, and they cut right from him opening his eyes and realized he just took for all his money to cut into O'Hara living the good life. They've really reversed their roles, where Lee was the dashing young man who was getting laid out on the town, and O'Hara was the guy who was on the outs with life, and he was a mess. Now the roles are completely reversed. He's getting laid.
And his wife is having fun. One of the few good sex moments in this show.
Yeah, like a happy sex moment. And she even has a funny comment, like, the last time we had sex like that, you put twins in me. And if I get pregnant, I'm going to kill you. And he's like, yeah, that's fair. You should.
yeah. I know. And so it's this great moment. And then he comes back and gives her jewelry. And Lucy O'Hara...
Also, can I just... Another public service announcement.
Yes?
Guys, don't give a woman jewelry right after sex, ever. Number one, it sends up every red flag you could. And number two, it's a stupid time to do it. As O'Hara shows us here.
But Lucy, she always knows in the past, whenever he's shown up with sort of big gifts, it means trouble is coming one way or another. And so she does. She calls him out. She's like, oh, you've been gambling again? And he has a great line here.
Yeah. When have you ever known me to win anything?
Just like, okay, well, that's true, but I still don't believe you got this in a good way. And look, a necklace, sure, fine, but if you die doing something stupid to get this stuff, I and your children are dead.
Yeah, so please bear that in mind, sir. Thank you for the necklace. Since you're going to be a bitch about me not really wanting a necklace, I just want a live husband.
Yeah, because a necklace will get me fuck all if you're dead.
Yeah, yeah.
So now O'Hara's not the only one taking stupid chances. Now we just have like random Chinese guys in low-class tongs selling opium in corner deals on the street.
And it's kind of like a cop show where the cops see the the low level drug dealer and they chase him down, except it's the hot way instead of the cops.
And they just come in and drag this guy's ass in to see Mai Ling.
And this guy wasn't selling weight. This guy was selling a little bit of opium to some random guy on the street. But that does not matter to anyone. Other than the only person who wants to let them off is Li Yong.
Yeah, because he's like, look, we don't have to be assholes about this. We don't, let's not make things worse. But Mai Ling's got you have to make things worse faster. I mean, she's ready to take this kid's head off, but she decides to do it in an even worse way later.
Yeah, and I mean, at this point, it doesn't even make good business sense because these S2E2 guys are a low-level gang who seems to be kind of probably affiliated to them in some way. And so it would have been easier to just fold them in and make them part of the gang, and then they have more leverage. But instead, she just wants to kill everybody and create havoc for Buckley, I suppose. I hadn't even thought of that, but it's probably Buckley's stupid ass behind all this.
Yeah, because Li Yong's like, be cool, be cool, be cool. And Mai Ling's like, okay.
Yeah, this kid's young and he's dumb, but he doesn't mean any disrespect. I'm just going to tell him to fucking knock it off and it'll be fine. Which it would have been.
Yes, but that's not what's going to happen.
No, because she says, hey, bring Zing, the maniac, the Mongolian maniac. Bring him.
But Assam, now that he's backed into a corner, realizes, hey, okay, maybe I can swallow my stupid pride a little bit, go back to Penny and say, all right, we'll do guard duty for you. Fine.
Yeah, and Penny she makes a really, really poignant remark here that the reason why she runs this company isn't like to carry on her dad's legacy, although she does say that. It's because she wants to have the illusion that she's independent. Independent of her husband, independent of every other person. She is her own entity, which I imagine was a very, very significant thing for women at the time, and is something that was extremely rare and really only possible out west, I think.
Yeah, no, it's, again, you only get this sort of ability for women to do stuff like this, even tentatively, when you have a severe enough labor shortage.
Or you're far out on the frontier where it can't be enforced, that you're doing something that, that's how you end up with women mayors, in the Old West and things like that.
Right. Yeah, there just aren't enough people to fill all the roles, and so the guys are like, well, fine, we'll let the ladies do it, because I don't have enough energy or time or people to stop them. So,
I figured it was kind of like there was no authority out there who could say, well, you can't do that. You're a woman. And so she was like, yeah, I already did it. What are you going to do? It's done. But
then we get our big sort of moral panic rally. And before we get into the rally, I noticed there was a sign that was selling antiques. And so you're thinking, wait, it's 1870. Who wants antiques?
Rich people? Yeah.
Rich people want the stuff from disintegrating Europe. Like, Europe is falling apart in all these different wars and revolutions. And so people are taking these like old fine pieces of furniture from like castles in Bavaria and from the French Revolution and whatnot and selling them to the new millionaires in America.
Especially the gold rush millionaires who would be living in San Francisco.
Right.
This show just goes so deep. It's insane.
But yeah, so we go past the antique sign and we're at a rally. And the first thing that stood out to me was that Penny's sister is there with her hair not covered by anything. And she's the only woman who doesn't have any sort of bonnet or hat on. And
ye gods! I did some research into bonnets after I discovered your discomfiture with this bonnet situation. And so I did not I couldn't identify. Those weren't poke bonnets those women were wearing. What kind of bonnets were they wearing? Because they were all the same kind of shitty, tiny little bonnet. I didn't even notice they were wearing bonnets at first because they were kind of hair colored.
Right.
Too.
Yeah.
I had to actually watch. So what was that kind of bonnet?
So that would just be kind of
let's just
something that they would wear for the day. They weren't particularly starched or stiff or made out of a bunch of straw to protect their faces from the sun. This was just sort of like their in town running errands, kind of being out and about kind of bonnet. So because the poke bonnets
and they started out as sleeping hats and then it became something you had to wear. I don't really understand how is it something you had to wear?
There's a whole litany of reasons, but there's the whole thing about hair is a woman's glory, so she doesn't just sort of show it to the world. She keeps it safe at home as one of her possessions, and only her family can see it or her husband.
God damn, that fucking baby Jesus has got to be the angriest little son of a bitch who ever lived. He's got the dumbest fucking rules. Your hair pisses me off.
I mean, there's kind of the thing back in the Roman Empire, the way that you show that you were a courtesan or a hetaria or a prostitute is you would have your hair uncovered. So women wanting to be respectable would always wear a hood over their hair. So this whole thing about covering your hair out in public in Western societies goes way back. I mean, that's the whole thing with the nuns not showing their hair either.
The habit. The habit, which is just a bonnet by a different name.
Right. I mean, it's basically sort of what women were wearing at the time. A lot of these, the idea of Christian nun sort of was developed.
I was expecting to see a way bigger, the big cone, the cone of shame. That's what I was expecting. You said bonnet. I was expecting the cone of shame thing. The bugs.
Oh, no, that would be if you were out traveling or you were a lower class woman who wanted to shade her face and keep it from getting any sun.
Oh, okay.
But that also wouldn't be really practical for a TV show where you couldn't see the characters' faces.
Yeah, that's kind of like that Boba Fett show where they were having the whole problem, should we show his face or shouldn't we? Yeah, so this is this. I love that this is 19th century Vivek giving the dumbest fucking speech where he's we're living in a time where people feel like they need to blow things up in order to be heard. Not, we're living in a time where these Irish psychopaths have blown shit up because they don't like the working conditions. Of other people. Not their own working conditions, the working conditions of other people. It really was. It was nice. It was good. I feel like it was a good social commentary. Either that, or we're just living the same century.
It was good old school populism. Your mayor's an idiot, and your police suck. So do what I say, and then I'll fix everything. And I feel like we've seen that recently somewhere. But the thing is, that was also the hits that were playing at this time in the 1870s.
Build the wall!
Right!
Build the wall! Yeah, they really had that vibe going. Well, I'm going to kick the Chinese out, and we're never going to have another Chinese person here.
Home.
The Chinese are the... Rah!
And then he does
damn them and their delicious foods.
Yep. And then he does the biggest pander. He gets that big mug of beer with the big foamy head on it, and he's you could have a beer with me. I mean, over there, you stinky weirdos.
Yeah, he might as well have been. And the San Francisco 49ers are the greatest football team on planet Earth. Yeah. Yeah. Really playing to the crowd. But then at the end of his stupid ass speech, this is where my problem with Sophie and her unladylike behavior comes in.
Yes.
Because she goes through the front door of a saloon, and that would not have happened. Number one, she's a young lady who's unescorted in this public space.
Right.
So that couldn't have happened, which I learned from you.
Yeah.
But then the front door thing, now that couldn't have happened either. They went in through a side door, and there was an entire side bar that women would get drunk in to spare men from having to see women drunk, which I find odd. But it seems like they were really pushing hard. Everything has been an aggressive sausage fest until recently. And I only realized how gay it looks recently when I saw Expendables 4. And I was like, there isn't a woman in this trailer. Not one. It's just oily men rubbing on each other. And that's how life was. They were literally no, there's hot women in the next room, but the door's shut. We're not No, don't look in there. There's hot women in there.
No girls in our boys' club. They're gross. Yeah. They cry.
Yeah, they were stuck on, like, 10-year-old boy in their treehouse bullshit. No, not even 10-year-old. 6-year-old boy bullshit in the treehouse.
But yeah, so anyway, Sophie and Leary are alone together in the Banshee. And when I saw this, I'm like, well, they're going to have to get married now. They're on a date.
Oh, because she catches his eye from across a crowd and then crosses this crowd and plows through the crowd and through all these rowdy miners to go get her Leary, who is hot as shit. I will give her that. So I understand where she's coming from, but I'm going to call bullshit on the possibility of it ever happening. She would have been raped 6 times trying to cross the street.
I mean, I don't know. These guys were focused on their political rally, and she was dressed.
Yeah, they really do box out the ladies. They probably didn't even notice who she was there.
Yeah.
Just try to put it out of their minds.
And she was dressed in a way that it's like, well, we might get in trouble if we mess with her. I mean, season 1 aside, but those guys were kind of riled up. But yeah, she had a little bit of sort of rich white lady armor on.
I don't know if you noticed, but conservative young men at a political rally tend to get slightly riled up as well. I might point to a January 6th incident.
Yeah, little bit. But these guys were watching the rich dude telling them what they want to hear, drink a beer, and that was really entertaining. So
yeah. Big incel energy.
But yeah, they're on a musical date. She drinks whiskey. They have to get married. There's her. Otherwise, she's ruined.
Well, she couldn't. So women were allowed to drink, and she would. What was she only allowed to drink? Slow gin, or what? Like, was she only allowed to drink cocktails? What? Why couldn't she drink whiskey?
Well, at that point, we're sort of rolling into Prohibition. And so things like tea and coffee and hot chocolate and lemonade and sort of the early dawn of soda pop is happening. And so she might be served beer or cider at home, occasionally maybe a glass of sherry because she's rich. But women did not drink hard liquor in that day and age.
Even at the bar? They were only drinking beer and wine?
Yeah.
Huh. Well, I'll be damned. I guess your tiny brains can't handle
women like Vega, bar owners and stuff. Yeah, they were slamming them back, whatever. But a nice girl like Sophie would not typically be drinking any sort of hard liquor at this point.
I wonder if that was due to your wandering uterus.
Well, yeah, I mean, our squishy little lady heads couldn't handle the hard liquor. But it was also about sort of this enduring need to keep women pure because they raise children. And so if they do naughty things, it'll infect their children with, it'll mess them up. Like, that was the same thing with women smoking, is like if women were smoking, it wrecked their purity so they couldn't be good mothers.
Oh, see, I thought that they just totally misunderstood the female biology to the point where they just didn't think that women could digest hard liquor or something like that. And like, because they
possibly that too.
They thought that women's uteruses moved throughout their body all the time.
Well, that's what makes us crazy.
That sentence is crazy. The sentence is crazy. So they just thought it was a sentient being inside their guts. I mean, it makes sense because women are constantly in pain from like their abdomen, so I get that. Like, there might be something inside trying to kill them, but that is such a fucking weird idea. They just had no idea. They were just like, women, here be monsters. Let's move on. Whew. All right, well, moving on. We're so Myling's hiring a Pinkerton dressed like a Vulcan princess in the middle of the whitest, richest bar on planet Earth.
Yeah, but she walks in there and everybody just stops. Like, they're going to be telling...
Yeah, she looks like she is going to Dragon Con, so it makes sense. She would stop conversation if she walked into Old Pan right now. But she's in a 19th century restaurant filled with men. The fact that she's a woman would have blown their minds. Right, but she's a
Chinese woman. And, these guys are going to be telling this story for years about how they were eating in that restaurant and this Chinese lady walked into the restaurant.
Dressed like she was going to Dragon Con, and then she opened her mouth and spoke English! Like...
Can you believe it? But yeah,
people would have been like, no, video.
That's where these guys were.
Proof or it's not real. Nobody would have bought it. Yeah. In the internet age, everybody would have been like, bullshit. What did your dog tell you that story? You fucking dope.
Yeah, But yeah, so she's there to hire Mr. Nichols, who is a failed Pinkerton. In other words, he was too drunk to work for the secret police.
He was too drunk to beat
crashers.
To beat a union member to death. Like, he just, I guess he slept through mass murder one day, and then he just missed it. These people, just so you guys know, they were not Batman. They were not detectives of any kind.
Nope.
They were people who would go and break the legs of striking union members.
Right.
And they were real pieces of shit. And but that's where we get the private detective agency idea in the United States. And they were not swell. And so she is talking to the biggest piece. Oh, and they still do that, but they're lobbyists now. Instead of going out and doing it by actually breaking legs, they just steal money and fuck people over. But this is who my link's gone to, because it takes a piece of shit to catch a piece of shit. And she needs this man to get Buckley.
Yeah, and he's not going to listen to her at first until she mentions Buckley. And that is clearly a name to conjure with. He is clearly pissed off a lot of people. Like, he's not going to give her the time of day until she's like, no. I want you to fuck up one particular guy in particular.
I would imagine if this man was alive in the present day, you could probably tip a barista $20 and she'd poison that motherfucker's coffee. Like, nobody likes this man. His mom hates him. Everybody wants him dead. So it seems like you could ask anybody on the street, like, hey, do you want to kill Buckley? And somebody would be like, yeah. No. You don't need to pay me, sir. I'll do this because I'll do this for public good.
And
this is my gift to you.
Yes, so she has put yet another iron in the fire. And then she, heads off to do her business. And Li Yong and Zing are meeting with the small-time Tong guys to tell them what's what.
The Sui Sing. Yes. And so the one thing I love about Li Yong and Zing, like the actors who play them, Joe Taslim and Dustin Nguyen, they both have really, they both do like kind of unique martial arts styles. Joe Taslim is an Indonesian guy, so he does Pencak Silat, and Dustin Nguyen is a Vietnamese guy, so he does Vo Vin Nam, which is similar in a lot of ways to Pencak. So they have really like unique styles that play well off each other, and it gives it it gives Zing a lot of exoticism in his, because he's supposed to be a kind of a Mongol. So I really, really love like these two, kind of a Laurel and Hardy type vibe, like he, or your Lethal Weapon type, Danny Glover and Mel Gibson.
Yeah, no, they are definitely each other's opposite. Li Yong shows up, he's got like his nice close cropped haircut. His clothes are like very crisp and clean and straight and pressed. And then Zing walks up and his hair is sticking out in every direction. He's wearing fur. He's got tattoos on his face. And he just wants to start something, man.
It looks like a Shaolin monk is traveling with a Mongol warlord and they're about to go fuck shit up. And Li Yong negotiates peace with these idiotic small-time criminals. But Zing wants no part of it. He's like, he's lying to you. And of course, he baits this idiot into insulting him, and he does deliver one of the greatest insults of this show. Do you remember it?
Oh, no. He calls him, you dumb Genghis cunt. And I was like, okay, that was funny.
Yeah, I'm not taking orders from Genghis cunt here. And then Zing punches him in the throat, and they all start stabbing everybody. Then we have the second set 2 of the show.
Oh, yeah, no. And the Mongol guys are there they just want to kill people. Like, they are just there to make a goddamn mess. And Li Yong is like, fuck me. I wanted everybody to be cool. Couldn't you just be cool for once, man?
Yeah, I was trying not to kill anybody today. Like, I had it written in my diary.
And Zing's like, but I love this. Come on, let's kill people. I'm here for this. Let's do it.
And he made a great point. He was like, My Ling wouldn't have sent me here if she wanted these people alive. Well, like, these people are dead because she wanted them dead. The end.
Yeah.
So you can be bitter about it, but whatever.
She wanted you to learn something here. And Li Yong, way back when he sort of decided to, like, back Mai Ling, he definitely had this moment of hesitation of, like, am I going to do this? And he is now going, oh, fuck, what have I done?
It also looks like he is looking like My Ling doesn't trust me, and I might have really fucked up here. I might be in the wrong corner right now.
Yeah.
Might have backed the wrong sibling on this one, because he can at least respect Assam. Because Assam acts in a way that is both noble and this kind of... He's kind of the edgier version of Li Yong anyway. And then he's got this insane dragon woman who just wants to fucking kill everybody that he works for.
Right. So, yeah, he just is like, I hate how this is going. I am in, yeah.
She does need him to stay alive, though. And I know this from being the wild-ass crazy person. You have got to have that yin to your yang, or your yang to your yin. I don't remember which one's the hot one, but... like the spicy one, but like you gotta have the milk to go with the spice, or else you will burn yourself up, and that's where she's headed here.
Yes, yeah. So that's left to simmer as well, and so we get a confrontation between Ah Toy and Mrs. Davenport, and because she's speaking Cantonese, I am willing to bet she spent some time in China as a missionary.
Oh, that would make sense. Now when we think of missionaries, we really only think of Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons, but there are missionaries of other sorts, I suppose.
Yeah, at this point in time, it was very common for people to get on boats to go save the heathen. I mean, that's a lot of like what was going on in Hawaii, and you started having missionaries going to Africa. A weird phenomena is they were there to sort of like Christianize them and Westernize them, but in the process wrote down the written languages for the first time for a lot of the people that they contacted just before wiping them out. So that's messed up. But
well, I guess there's a little sugar with the salt there then. Shit. I don't know. You got to look for the bright spot in it.
So Atoy and Mrs. Davenport, they have this confrontation. Mrs. Davenport is like, I'm here to save your girls. And Atoy's like, from what? And where are you going to take them? And what are you going to make them? Like, what future do these girls have if they don't work for me?
She does intimate they've met before. Because she says, like, your Cantonese has improved. And she's clearly impressed by this woman. So, so I think there's an interesting dynamic that's going to develop out of these two because they seem to already have a history anyway.
Yes, you have these two strong-willed, powerful women kind of going, head to head. And it's another interesting thing, the way society is set up. These women see themselves kind of as enemies, as antagonists to each other, where, like, since the whole world's against women, shouldn't they be teaming up? But yeah, that's not the way society sets things up.
No, they were basically forced to hate each other.
Yeah,
every woman was an island back then. And
yes,
God damn, that must have been a miserable and terrifying way to live.
And so, we can tell we're getting sort of near the end of the episode because they're setting up all of the season 2 fights now. So we've got the Atoy versus Mrs. Davenport. We've got the Irish mob versus the Hopway Hatchet Men and them guarding the Chinese workers going in and out of Mercer Steel. And
none of those Irish guys do shit. They just watch all these Chinese hatchet men roll right on through. But they look mad, so it's.
Yes.
I think we're going to see a Titanic battle filled with a lot of white people dying. It's going to be a good time.
But Leary may not be the best guy to lead the charge, because he seems a little distracted.
He is, because Sophie is hot, and she is a whiskey-drinking, cursing son of a bitch, and she is got her eye on O'Leary, and she will have Leary. She has proven she's going to have Leary. And I'm going to stop calling him O'Leary at some point. We are in season 2. At some point, I'll stop calling him O'Leary.
And then we get to see, Sam sitting in his house in his bathrobe because, it's chilly, so you wear your robe over your clothes. And he's realizing he's not in charge anywhere. He's not running the mayor's office. He's not running his house. He's
big mad.
Cranky man.
He is big mad. Woo! He's mad. He's looking at that woman like he wants to put her in a home. Like, he's like, I need to get this bitch out of here. Where can I put this woman? I need to put her somewhere else.
She is making me look like a fool, and I got to do something about that. Because Penny is, talking to Sophie.
And they're clearly laughing at him under their breath and talking about him because they're glancing over at him. And they're like mocking him in his own house. I mean, these two are trying to get
Yeah. And Mai Ling, she's kind of running her empire the way Penny is. And just like Sam Blake is like, I don't like how things are going. Li Yong is sitting at that boardroom table going, I don't like how things are going.
Yeah, this seems to be turning away from me.
Yeah.
But then you got O'Hara eating a huge roast beef meal.
Yes.
And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking to myself, all right, on a policeman's salary? I don't know, sir. That looks suspect.
Well, remember, he's got the graft going, so, and yeah.
Oh, yeah, clearly. But it's just like he's tipping his hand again. And he kind of... Was it me thinking it, or did he look kind of like he was like, shit, I think I might have overdone on the dip?
Oh, no. I thought like he was doing okay, for once I've figured it out. Because while his wife doesn't want necklaces, he can bring more meat home. And she's like, well, this is for the babies.
Yeah, well, there is that.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, if you're going to get yourself killed feeding the babies, I guess that's all right.
Yeah. But she's willing to accept that. But meanwhile,
Lee's having laudanum for dinner.
Yes, and he is one strand of yarn away from having like the conspiracy wall up on his. Like he is.
He's going to be in 7, number 2.
Yes.
8.
And this is what I caught the second time I watched this. The very last scene. When Assam goes to Penny and says, okay, fine, we'll guard, he's looking in one of the furnaces at Mercer Steel that was cold. And he's like,
oh, yeah. Yep.
And so at the end here, not only are the Hop Way escorting the workers in and out of Mercer Steel, they're also escorting the bad opium.
That heron.
Yes.
Ah, I see.
And so that
is a good call.
Yeah. And so, and I'm like, okay, so they're putting the opium in a cold furnace in a working steel factory. I wonder what could go wrong now.
Well, that's like a burned out furnace or something. Those, because that was like a fucked up old part of the factory, I believe. So those, I don't think those
it might have been.
I think they were like, oh, well, those are in disuse or disrepair. So it seems like a good place to store it, I think.
I mean, as things go. And so that for me was sort of the final confirmation that, okay, so since we're actually smuggling opium around and moving it around and hiding it, this is a nod to the movie The French Connection.
Ah, there we go. Well, now we understand the title, which I really went down a rabbit hole trying to explain as like Chinese folk hero, Huo Yuan Jia, and all kinds of shit. Chen Zhen, I went crazy with it, and it was all nonsense because it was The French Connection the entire time. One thing I forgot to mention is in that the second interaction with Nellie Davenport and Atoy, there's a great thing where Chow looks at her and he goes, "Oh, here to save the world again," and she goes, "No, just your people, since you're too busy exploiting them." And he replies, "Someone has to," and she goes,
"Which, save or exploit?"
And he goes, "Yes." Like just playing the inscrutable Asian to a T there.
Yes. Yeah. And, once again saying like all of these situations are complicated and there's no easy way through.
Yeah. Well, just like in real life, there is no person who is the hero all the time. It just, and from the anybody else's perspective, they might be the villain. So I love this show for that as well. It really kind of, especially with Leary, he is the villain on one side, but just an absolute hero from most perspectives. So it's from a lot.
And he is an interesting guy, whereas I feel like just about everybody else who's a main character is trying to build up sort of their empire. He seems to like be where he wants to be, and he's sort of like looking out for the people in his empire, but he doesn't strike me as somebody like, say, Mai Ling or Atoy, who's trying to expand their empire.
No,
so
and
he's
that actually
an interesting guy for that.
That comes through in the music when he's pissed off at the guy playing the piano, and he's like, "You played that fucking song 3 times tonight, and it sucks. Don't you know any other songs?" And the guy's like, "No, I don't know any other songs." And he's like, "God damn it!" And he wants to hear Beethoven. I think he doesn't want to expand his empire at all. He simply wants to improve the living situation of the people around him right now, which is understandable.
Yes. And and it makes him stand out as a character amongst everyone else.
And it does kind of lead us to think he might have a bit more breeding than we're led to think. Like before his wife and his kid died, I think you mentioned it like when we tried this the first time. That you think he might have some more, a bit more of a regal carriage, aristocratic carriage, perhaps.
Yeah, like maybe he had a more genteel life when he had his wife and his sons, and like they were taken by smallpox, and he's like, well, fuck, what am I going to do? And so he sort of became this mob boss. But who knows? We might find out more about him.
We might. Maybe we'll get a spinoff show. Oh, Leary, the spinoff. They'll put the O in for that.
Just for you.
I'll see to it. Just for me.
All right. Well, we will be back next week for episode 3, Not How We Do Business.
Yeah, we will.
And I have a feeling the opium and the bad opium is going to be a part of that.
Bad opium. Opium is bad by and large for most people, I would say. Unless you've recently had a limb cut off. Maybe just stay away. That's the 3rd PSA of this episode, by the way. Don't do drugs. Don't do the opium, kids.
Yeah, that is not going to be good for you. We've been writing books about how it's going to mess you up for hundreds of years. Yeah.
I guess the Chinese really had a handle on it until the British East India Company fucked it all up. But there was casual opium use, because I looked into it, because I was like, what the hell has happened here? Why did everybody turn into an opium addict? And yeah, the British are. So if you're British and you're listening to this, feel bad. No, you shouldn't feel bad. You didn't do anything. But your grandparents were probably shitty.
Okay. Well, if I want to find more of your stuff out there on the internet, where do I look?
PlagueOfStrength.com, and also at Plague of Strength on the Instagrams.
You have lots of really entertaining and extremely interesting videos on there where I am always socking information away as I approach that period of time in my life.
Oh, sweet. I actually have...
period of time in my podcast.
I've got one that I haven't posted yet, but it's showing some of the Victorian-era workout clothes, and it's very fun. They're kitten heels. There's a lot of kitten heels.
Oh my goodness. Victorian era workout clothes are a trip for both sexes. But
the Victorian era strong women lifted in heels sometimes. Like, it was a thing.
And corsets.
Yeah, just crazy. Like, a woman beat, like, the greatest bodybuilder of the time, Sandwina, beat this Sandow guy, and she probably did it in kitten heels. Like, that is bonkers. Like, she outlifted a dude... the greatest bodybuilder dude of the time period in heels. What? Come on.
That is nuts.
Yeah. It's just amazing. Like, people just keep looking at these time periods, and they're not drawing away the things that they should. Like that woman did that in heels, or like the bicycle that person was riding weighed 100 pounds at least. That's an expensive an expensive bike at the time weighed 100 pounds. Like, that's crazy to think about, even when you get past all the smells. But and where can we find you?
The rest of my podcast time is spent with the history of American food. And last chance. Both of us will be talking at the Intelligent Speech Online Conference, talking with each other, talking with other historians. It's tomorrow. Last chance to get your tickets. Discount code is FOOD. Hope to see you there. Well, that was an interesting episode to set things up, and we will see where everybody goes next week. So That's when we'll talk to all of you.
Until that time.
All right.
Bye, guys.
All right. Bye-bye. And for those of you who've hung on this long, yes, I know it's Gene Hackman now. I watched the movie a really long time ago. We're on Instagram at pcgpodcast, and you can always reach out to us by email at pcgpodcasters@gmail.com. And you can find more dope beats like this one from royalraven.com.
My name's Sebastian Major, and I am the host of the Our Fake History podcast.
I'm Rebecca Larson with the Tudors Dynasty podcast.
This is Greta Harden.
My name is Benjamin Jacobs.
I'm Anton.
And I'm Rick.
I'm David Montgomery.
I'm Bree.
My name is Roberto Toro.
I'm Jamie.
And I'm Rob. We will be speaking at Intelligent Speech.
I am looking forward to speaking at Intelligent Speech 2023.
I will be speaking at Intelligent Speech Online this year.
Mark your calendars for this November 4th. Intelligent Speech, the online conference for history fans by history podcasters.
It's a 3-ring circus of fascinating content with around 24 hours of live presentations.
This year is all about contingencies.
Times when history meets the unexpected.
The topic of my keynote address is no contingencies.
The Tudors and their contingency plans.
So go to intelligentspeechonline.com to get your tickets.
We'll see everybody on November 4th.